The newspaper is the first rough draft of history, but that doesn't mean that your citations need to be rough too.
Creating a footnote and bibliography reference for a modern-day newspaper is very straightforward. In fact, in the Chicago Manual of Style, it actually recommends that if you can do so, you can just put the name of the newspaper, the date, and the article title in the text of your essay or article, and therefore you don't need a footnote at all. However, if you want to be crystal clear, as I recommend that you do, and if you don't really know how to put that information in your sentence without it becoming clunky, you can always just do a standard footnote citation. Now, a newspaper article is just like any other periodical publication, where we have information about the article, the part, and the newspaper issue, the whole. And those two bits of information put together give us our footnote. So I always recommend we start with the footnote just because it's important to do the bibliography at the end when we know all the different works we've actually cited. So if we start with our footnote, we begin with the name of the authors. Now the authors are usually listed in the byline of the newspaper, and here it's helpfully right on the fold, but you can still read it, Sarah Knapton and Laura Donnelly. Now if I type these names in, you do want to put them in the way that they are written in English grammar for a sentence. So first name first, second name second, followed by and, Laura Donnelly, in the same order. Now a footnote being like a sentence, you add a comma and move on to the name of the article. Now an article being part of a whole, it goes into speech marks rather than italics or underline. And in those speech marks, we want to include the title in title capitalization. So here it's written in sentence capitalization. Only the S of second is capitalized and the R because it's an abbreviation. But for title capitalization, you want to capitalize every word except for words like as or of, which are prepositions. So let's type that in. Second lockdown warning as our rate rises. We then want to separate the title of the part from the title of the publication, and we do that with a comma. But we put the comma, as you would in most English grammar, inside the speech or quotation marks. That comma belongs to that clause, that title, and therefore we want to put it inside the speech marks that mark it off from the rest of our footnote. The next portion is the title of the publication, and that goes into italics because it's a whole object, a whole document. I can actually lift it up, so it gets to be in italics. Now, the title of this newspaper is The Daily Telegraph, but it is part of the Chicago Manual of Style that you actually, in English language titles, only English language ones, remove that first article. So you just use Daily Telegraph. Now, Daily Telegraph is a pretty well-known broadsheet in the United Kingdom, but it is not necessarily the only Daily Telegraph in the world. So I do want to make it clear which newspaper I'm talking about. So in parentheses or brackets and out of italics, I type in London, United Kingdom. And that just lets people know that this particular newspaper is the London Daily Telegraph, even though London isn't anywhere in the name. If it was a newspaper like the London Times or the Derbyshire Times, something that gave a location in its title, you probably wouldn't need to do that. But this is ambiguous enough that I just wanted to include it. After the title, we have another comma, and we just need one more piece of information, and that's the date. Now, on most newspapers, they'll be up here at the top in the masthead of the newspaper, but that's not always the case. You might have to look around. But you do want to get the date of the entire issue, not just of the article, if for some reason that article has a different date on it, although that's not so common anymore. And that date is the 22nd of August, 2020. Now, the date on this particular issue is written with the day followed by the month and the year, but you do want to standardize that according to the Chicago Manual of Style, which is to put the month first, the date followed by a comma, and then the year. And putting a full stop, that's your entire footnote. Now, I know many of you are probably wondering, what about the page number? Don't I need to put page 1? Well, for a modern newspaper, because of the way that they're printed, they come out so quickly with many versions. They might make subtle changes as they're printing them out. They often change pagination very slightly. So while the particular headline or the particular front page article isn't likely to change that much over the course of the printing, other newspaper articles might shift from being wholly on one page to being spread out over two, or might move from page 3 to page 4. If that's the case, what you need to do is you need to think about how is this article going to be most easily found. And for most cases, it's going to be found by the name of the article, probably cross-referenced with the author from that particular issue. People are just going to flip through it, so you don't need to have a particular page number. However, if it is a digital version or something you know is static, something that's not going to change, there's only one version, you can go ahead and put the single page number at the end of your footnote. This is particularly the case if it is in fact a PDF or electronic version that you can point to that will always have those same page numbers. When it comes to creating the bibliography entry, we need to include pretty much the same information. So we want to start with the surname or last name first, because remember, bibliography entries are listed alphabetized by those surnames, and we want to make it easy to find. So we have Napton, Sarah, but all the other names go in normal sentence order, and Laura Donnelly. Now, bibliography entries are like paragraphs rather than sentences, so we put a full stop after that author. The rest of it is actually going to be very similar to our footnote. We start with the title, of the article, and again we put that into headline capitalization. The next thing we do is we put a full stop inside those speech marks and move on to the publication title. Daily Telegraph, London, United Kingdom. And again, a full stop to separate the title and its location from the rest of your bibliography entry. Finally, you want to put in the date of the article. August 22nd, 2020, full stop. And you wouldn't necessarily put a page number in your bibliography. That's not something that normally happens unless there is a particularly good reason for doing so. Now, if you're doing an individual article in your essay or article, then this is how you would normally do it, pointing to that specific piece of information with its own author. However, if, for example, you're doing a study of all of the political articles of the Daily Telegraph across several years, you may not want to include a separate entry for each one, in which case, for your bibliography, you can have an abbreviated form, and that would remove the title and author of the individual article and go straight to the publication, Daily Telegraph, London, United Kingdom, and instead of every individual date, you would just do the date range. So, for example, August, Alt 0150, and then 27th, if it was a date range like that, or you might just put the year of all the different issues you looked at, and that would be an abbreviated form of that bibliography entry. And that's all there really is to it. You include these as you need them to get as much and as precise detail as you need, but as I said, the Chicago Manual of Style really says that you can just put the information in your text if that works better for you.
I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please consider hitting like or subscribe so I know this is the kind of video you'd like more of. And if you have any questions about citing newspapers or any other primary sources, go ahead and put them in the comments below.